On today's show, Kristaps Porzingis is now a member of the Hawks, but the NBA draft waits for no one. We get the final thoughts out there before the big day on Wednesday, the targets for the Hawks, options for the Hawks, and much more. It's all coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2007 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you deep into the night here on a Tuesday evening into Wednesday. The NBA draft is officially here. Later on today, the Hawks will be entering the draft with the 13th pick, and we will get into all of that and much more in a second. But first, I should encourage you at the top of the podcast to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out and subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. We're also on YouTube. Please like this video as you are watching it, and be sure to tell your friends and family and colleagues about this podcast. And big thanks to everyone, honestly, who joined us throughout this entire pre-draft season, the last 2.5 months or so. So please stick around after this when the draft is happening. We will be rolling into the month of July and beyond on this podcast. It's a year-round operation, and we hope you join us moving forward. I should also say this is my second podcast, and only a matter of hours. We had a very unscheduled emergency podcast on Tuesday evening, breaking down the Hawks trading for Kristaps Porzingis, which is not exactly a name that was making a ton of rounds before today. But first, we kind of dive into that deal for about 25 minutes. They're covered most of the angles on that. My overall analysis of that trade right now is that I like it quite a bit for the Hawks. It's not without risk, as I discovered in that podcast and discussed in that podcast. It's one of those things where, like, he has some injury history on those things, but the player, the situation, the contract, it all kind of makes sense for Atlanta. One thing here at the top of the show about that is that it still has not been announced at this point in time, late into the night on Tuesday into Wednesday. Not official, not announced, not stamped by the team, but it's been confirmed multiple times by multiple people. So I will just assume that's going to be getting done in the coming hours and days. Also, when I recorded that show earlier today, we did not know which second-round pick was going to be coming to Atlanta. Since then, Mike Scotto of Hoops Hype reported that the Hawks will be getting the less favorable part of a 2026 second-round pick from the Boston Celtics. The details there are still kind of fuzzy. It's kind of one of those like swapped picks. But needless to say, not a super exciting second-round pick, so kind of more of a throw-in there. I said on the show earlier tonight that my projection for that pick, whichever one was going to be, was pretty low. I know Hawks fans were hoping it was going to be one of those picks from in this year's draft, which are 32 and 36. Not as much. That could still be a decent pick, but still just more of a throw-in. But alas, the analysis still holds up. I still like the deal. And no matter what that pick happens to be, I will be high on the transaction, at least for right now. With that said, I will let that podcast stand on its own, and I encourage you to listen to it if you happen to miss that one. But from this point forward, we'll kind of be diving into the draft. It is the big day. We've been covering the draft for a couple of months now, pretty consecutively. Lots of guests, lots of analysis. Obviously, there were some changes to what's going on, adding Porzingis, but still, for me, big picture, best player available is my kind of mindset. It's also what Ansi Saleh said on Monday, and if you believe that, then it doesn't change that much. It just has the Hawks just have one less pick to work with than they had a few hours ago. So I'll discuss the 13th pick, which is the pick the Hawks have. But again, if you have time during the day today, I recorded something like 25 or 30 draft-focused episodes over the last 2.5 months. So there's plenty of content about all these prospects. My thoughts, my guest thoughts, they're all there for you. So if you have some time digging into that stuff, very relevant conversations up and down the podcast archive. But to set the table a little bit before I get into the prospects, I think it's still being a little bit undervalued right now, how much uncertainty and I would say optionality, to use the Ansi Saleh term, the Hawks still have, even after the Porzingis trade. So this is going to be a point I was going to make no matter what tonight. It's a little bit different now post-trade, but it's still true to me. And forgive me if you're an everyday listener. Number one, I appreciate you. But number two, I've probably said some of this stuff before. But the uncertainty really does kind of stem from a combination of a lot of things. Number one, you have the front office overhaul. This is a different group without a track record that's been like established to kind of make reads off of. You got a young core that is really intriguing and talented that also makes sense together as a unit. There's the absence of like super obvious like positional needs. Like right now, the bench is very thin, but like they have a clear top 6 that makes sense together with the last year starting 5 and now Porzingis being added to that. Also, there's like a relative lack of consensus in this draft, which kind of adds to the optionality and the intrigue and the uncertainty of what's going on here. And then the last thing is the Hawks still have the trade exception, which is $25 million or so they can use. And they have the mid-level exception they can use if they want to. And they have Karis LeVert's bird rights. They have ways to add to their roster, both in the draft and out of the draft. So all of that, throw it in a stew, throw it in a recipe, and there's still like lots of uncertainty and optionality here. I would say more so than in most drafts. Like the Hawks can still go a lot of different directions, even if it seems like it's more straight ahead now. And look, they might just go in and make one pick and that'll be it on Wednesday. Very possible, but they still could have some different paths to be taken on Wednesday. So for instance, they could still trade up. Now, some of the juice has been taken out of that to some degree because a lot of the popular notions about the Hawks trading up had to do with centers, and in particular, Common Malawatch was a popular target and discussion point for Hawks fans, and just some of the reporting that was out there as well. That is not impossible still now. I think it's probably less likely than it was before, but if they love a guy, it's possible that they want to go get that guy. Like that's definitely conceivable to me. I also believe that trading down is also quite possible at this point. Maybe even more so than it was a few hours ago. Now, this is probably a scenario that I've discussed the least overall because it's not sexy. Fans generally don't like trading down. Not everybody, but like as a general consensus. But there are 2 scenarios at 13 where it would be very logical to trade down. One of those would be if you got to a spot there at 13 and you had 3 or 4 guys that were on your board still that you were similarly high on, let's say. And you're confident that you can get one of those guys a few spots later. I call this the Travis Schlenk. He did this a few times back in the day. The Trey Luka one was a popular one. But anyway, it's one of those things where if they really do have similar grades, you can move down and still get one of your guys. That's one way. The second way is if you had a tier of 2 or 3 guys that you really liked, and unfortunately they all happened to go right before you picked, for example. Like if you had 2 or 3 guys that you really loved and they're gone, you look at a situation where you might be at the top of a tier, and generally you don't love a draft at the top of a tier because you're getting like a similar player, but you're paying a higher price for that player. If that were to happen and somebody below you wants to come up a spot or 2 or 3, I would be very interested in trading down, for example. So I'm not saying you're going to do that or that you have to do that or that you should do that, but I would say that's very interesting and available potentially as an option for you. Again, fans don't like trading down. I understand that, but it does make sense. And especially because I don't like trading up in a vacuum. So if you put that together, it's like kind of logical that I would like trading down more than some people would because of that. Also, there are 2 teams in this draft that are very logical trade up candidates. Brooklyn is one of them. They have 4 picks out of 8. They have 19, 22, 26, and 27 now. That's a very logical trade-up team. They can't, well, I shouldn't say they can't. They probably don't want to make 5 picks in the top 40. Maybe they do, but could want to package up. Also, the reigning NBA champion Oklahoma City Thunder have 15 and 24 and a bunch of future picks. So if they have a guy that they love, maybe they want to go up from 15 to 13. Very possible. Again, it's not just those teams, but it's possible that the Hawks might find themselves in kind of in-between land where moving down makes sense. Also, trading 13 out of the draft is still possible. Again, I think probably less likely. The Hawks probably will want to add someone on a rookie scale contract that's cheap that they can kind of grow with in the future. But if the perfect deal came along on Wednesday to kind of pair 13 with a trade exception or pair 13 with something else to go out and get a guy, that would kind of make some sense. Like I've in the past hypothetically talked about Cam Johnson as a target for the Hawks with a trade exception. 13 for Cam Johnson is like not a crazy idea. For example, like I would not trade 13 for a lot of guys that people ask me about, like Marcus Smart or Colin Sexton. There's like these guys in the $18 to $24 million range that are good players that it's like kind of an overpay for Smart and Sexton. 13 for Cam Johnson seems like reasonable to me. I'm not saying they have to do that, but it's like those kind of options, or maybe you trade for a player and a pick or whatever. again, I would say overall, the entire league is still having a tough time deducing what the Hawks are going to do, what they want to do, because they don't have the obvious long-term glaring holes that some teams do in the lottery. And they have this front office that's like cloak and dagger on purpose, which I like. So it'll be fun to see what they do. It's a little bit vexing. The trade today was not really on the radar that I could glean from that. Really anyone, even people that were breaking the news today, your Jake Fishers, Mark Steins, like it wasn't like they were saying, oh, this has been in the works for a long time. It kind of came together pretty quickly, it seemed like. So for me, I like all of that. And it helps that the first deal out of the box for Onsi and this front office was one that I really liked and thought was a good bit of business. But that's kind of the set the table of this class and this draft. I love the draft. If you're new to the podcast, I really, really, really love the draft. It's my favorite day of the year, probably. But there really are a lot of options. And again, they could just stay put and draft one player, and that'd be totally fine with me, especially if there's guys that I like. But it could still get a little weird, even if a lot of the quote-unquote weirdness and the excitement happened maybe a day early with the Porzingis trade. All right, more to come on my own process, my own evaluations, as well as my kind of final thoughts on this class in just one moment. This show is brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time that you had an urgent need, perhaps for a plumber or a service provider. If they didn't answer the first time, did you wait? You probably didn't. You probably moved on, and that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system, and it's built to streamline and scale requests for communications, all from an app on your phone or on your computer. At OpenPhone, they actually let you manage your business calls and text from a single app, and they have the shared inbox feature that's an absolute game changer. Your whole team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat at all. And they have the OpenPhone AI agent that can handle your calls after hours, answer common questions, and capture any leads so that you never miss a customer. OpenPhone is also offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That is OPENPHONE, openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over for you at no extra charge. openphone.com/lockedonnba. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, and even as I'm recording this podcast, there was a little bit of intel here in the midnight to 1 a.m. hour that just came through my email box from Mark Stein. Mark Stein just kind of floating out there, a name that's been popular and that's not like an original name, one I talked about before, but Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been tied to the Hawks in some degree of potential pursuit. He's a free agent. It'd probably have to be a sign and trade or the mid-level, but another name to monitor. I'll talk about that later, at a later date, but that's just one to keep an eye on, even now, again, at midnight on Wednesday. Back to the actual NBA draft. So just saying this out loud for new listeners or whatever, I've watched a lot of film on these players. I am not Sam Vecini. I'm not Ben Pfeiffer. I'm not John Wasserman, or I'm doing this year-round. And I have been the main draft writer at Dime for a long time. Like, I cover the draft for national outlets. It's not just a Hawks thing for me. I do cover the league in general, and the draft has been a specialty / like, I love the draft. I just do. So I love it. I'm into it more than most people are and informed at a pretty high level. I'm not Sam Vecini. I'm not a total like expert on this full time, but I do watch real games. I think it's important to do that. I think it's important to get a view of what these guys are in context, not just watch highlights or read scouting reports or whatever. I'm not a full timer, but I do this quite a bit. With that said, I like to be realistic. 13 is a tough spot in this draft. I like that spot for the Hawks, but it's like, as far as projecting is concerned, there's some real uncertainty. There's like a consensus top 5 or 6. Obviously, Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper are not going to be falling to the Hawks. I think Con Kneppel, Trey Johnson. There's guys that won't be available probably. But look, the way I'll put it right now is that I'd be very happy with one of 3 guys at 13 that I would say are realistic targets. Now, would I guess that at least 1 or 2 of them is not there at 13? Yes, but we'll see. Those 3 guys that I'd be very happy with if I am the Hawks would be, in no order, Carter Bryant of Arizona, Collin Murray-Boyles of South Carolina, and Cedric Coward of Washington State. To be clear, I would have already said this before the Hawks made the Porzingis trade. I have said it many times. I've been saying it for the whole cycle. But there was this belief in a lot of corners of the Hawks internet, even nationally, honestly, that the Hawks had to take a center, or they were definitely going to target. And I have said consistently, even then, they needed to acquire a center in some way. They didn't have to draft one. That's a distinction that matters. For me, I'm a best player available drafter. There is some nuance there as far as like if guys are in the same tier, maybe you use fit or skill set as a tiebreaker, but I'm not breaking tiers for team needs or fit or whatever. I like to take the best player. And as a reminder, rookies are not very good generally. You're not drafting for rookie seasons. You're drafting for what the future might hold for these players. I think it's a very common thing, so I'm not picking on it, but it's like there's a common desire to kind of plug a rookie into a role on the depth chart on a team. And like, yeah, they might play for you, but most of them are not very good, and you don't want to rely on them if you're trying to win games. And if you haven't noticed, the Hawks are trying to win games. You don't make the Porzingis trade if you're not trying to win games. So like they're trying to win games. Rookies are variable. All that said, you're drafting for the future much more than you are for the present. So for me, the mindset operationally was already best player available, and that's where I still am right now. But in case you haven't followed these guys closely, I want to give a quick rundown of the three guys I just mentioned. Again, Carter Bryant, Collin Murray-Boyles, and Cedric Coward. Bryant is a 6'7" forward with a 7-foot wingspan, big physical combo forward. I say this all the time, but you just cannot have too many of these kind of guys. Two-way wing players do not grow on trees. Teams pay a lot for them in draft, in trade, in free agency. They are worth a lot, and they can play together with other guys that are like them. The Hawks have three of them already to some degree in Dyson, Zach, and Jalen. That all matters too. But Bryant is a good athlete, checks all the boxes that you want. Defensively, I like the potential quite a bit. He's a pretty real shooter. Shot 37% from three at Arizona as a freshman. Played a pretty small role at Arizona, for sure. There's some projection here. That's why he might be available at 13. But I do like him quite a bit. Murray-Boyles is not as easy of a projection. He's not the like cookie cutter two-way forward that Bryant might be. But Murray-Boyles is, again, 6'7" or so without shoes, 240 pounds, big, thick, strong guy, north of 7-foot wingspan, long arms. For me, the best defender in the entire draft. The best defender in the entire draft. The big question is about his offensive role and his shooting. I get that. He did average 17 points a game in the best league in America in the SEC this last season. He's got a great feel for the game on both ends of the floor. He's a good finisher, a good screener, a good passer. Not a plug-and-play guy. I will certainly acknowledge that, but pair him with Okongwu, pair him with Porzingis, pair him with Jalen Johnson. Like, he has got optionality, and I love the defense. I'm in at 13. And then Cedric Coward is a big swing. There's a split on him. He's had a weird path to get here that we'll talk about more if they draft him. But, you know, from D3 to Washington State, Eastern Washington, but had a great combine, 6'5", 7'2" wingspan, huge hands, fluid athlete, big time shooting prospect. Really love the way he shoots the ball. Everyone who's seen him work out in this process has been saying he's been shooting the heck out of the ball for weeks and weeks now. I think he'll defend. I really like him as an upside bet. And again, as I'll come back to in a second, I am not saying these are the only guys that I would take at 13 or only guys that I would consider. But if one of those guys is available and only one of them is available, I'm probably taking them at 13. That's where I would be. Now, for me, that is a three-player tier of guys that I'll be giving a very enthusiastic review about late Wednesday night if they draft them, but they are not the only players. And we'll get into more of the options in just one moment. This show is brought to you by WayFair. There's nothing quite like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling that you have escaped into your personal oasis. If you want to update your patio this season, WayFair has made it so easy. Turn your space into a space that feels like your own, comfortable, stylish, and ready for summer. WayFair has everything you need to level up that outdoor space. That includes conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos, and everything you need to set the vibe the way that you want it. It's like giving your backyard a resort feel without the resort price tag. And if you're working within a budget like I always am, you can filter in and find exactly what you're looking for with WayFair. That's also the case if you don't have massive space to work with and you want to work with a smaller area, they can do that too. And delivery with WayFair is also free, fast, and totally hassle-free as well. Even for larger items, it's been huge for me in the past, living in an apartment at times, for instance. Whether it is an event that I'm hosting with friends, just unwinding with a small group, or by myself even, it's now genuinely awesome and feels like my personal and private retreat. Do not wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with WayFair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now. Shop a huge outdoor selection. That's WAYFAIR, wayfair.com. WayFair, every style, every home. All right, so I went through the three-player tier that I really do like in this range for Atlanta, but I am not going anywhere near saying that it has to be one of those guys. That's a silly framing for me. I think one of my kind of operating principles is that there is too much certainty about the draft in the minds of people that even are smart. Teams, agents, even evaluators on the outside, people should be less sure about the draft than they are, basically, because there's a lot more uncertainty. You're going to miss. Everyone misses. That's the nature of the beast. So keeping an open mind is probably a good idea in general. But I have those three guys at the top of my more realistic tiers. Again, Bryant, Murray-Boyles, and Coward in some order. For what it's worth, I was going to do a mock draft roundup on this show, but then the Hawks made the big trade, and all the mocks, I think most of the mocks, I think maybe ESPN updated, but most of them have not. So it's kind of not the same exercise anymore. But there's always been a wide berth this entire time. 13's been a wide range of players for the Hawks, which does make sense when you look at all of their best player available stuff, where their team is, etc. If those guys are all gone and no one like shockingly falls, I think you can kind of widen out a little bit. But there are other options that I'd be very intrigued by. Like, for example, Illinois guard Kasper Giakoušonis. He's been a consensus like top 10 or 12 guy in this class most of the way. Not a perfect player, but certainly very talented. A big ball handler, like 6'5", 6'6" ball handler, could play with Trey or without Trey. Talented guy. I'd be there for sure, interested in him. For the record, they could still draft a center. Now, that will confuse people if they do that. But if you are a believer in best available player, Porzingis is on an expiring contract. And Okongwu is versatile. Like, you could still draft a center. In fact, I would not avoid it actively. If you believe that, for instance, Thomas Sorber or Johan Berenger are the best player available, just take them, I believe. That will be a tough sell to some fans. I get it. But you don't have to have those guys play. Like Berenger in particular wouldn't be ready anyway, probably. So that's kind of what you're looking for the long term. Derek Queen could fall. Like, I don't love the fit, but as like a best player available choice, very, very conceivable to me. So it's not as easy to sell again a center, but it's definitely possible. There are also guys where I would like totally understand the rationale at 13 if things break a certain way. Like Noah Essenguet from France. Very raw player, but like interesting upside, 6'10", rangy, athletic, kind of combo positional player. Neat Clifford is the opposite of that, like an older guy from Colorado State, but I really like Neat Clifford. It's his feel. He's done a lot of things at a lot of levels. Jeremiah Fears, like, is a point guard that I don't love drafting, but at 13, like, you might want to have to trade down because like someone will probably come get him, for example. Like, I'm intentionally casting a wide net. So that's the range. Right now, I'm looking at the consensus board at rookiescale.com, a great resource, by the way. They kind of composite all these big boards together into a consensus. There's a top 19 on that list. I would say 17 of those 19 guys I would be like totally fine with at 13. Now, the two that I wouldn't be, I'd be like flummoxed, but not like angry, if that makes sense. And they are BYU's Agor Demon and Georgia's Asa Newell. Now, Demon is a 6'9" ball handler. Like, I get the appeal. Best passer in the draft, probably. Great vision. If he either shoots or defends, he's probably going to be really good. We'll see. So I don't hate it at all. He's got real ceiling. Asa Newell, like, might just be like a good, like, third big in the league, which isn't bad at all at 13. Like, that's a reasonable outcome. He's kind of a tweener. I don't him at all. Like, it's just that I have those guys closer to 20 than I do to 10. But if you draft the guy that I have at 20 or 19 on my board at 13, like, that's not crazy in a draft that I've been saying is flat this entire time. So there's that. Now that 22 is off the board, the range probably should be smaller. Like, I've been saying for weeks now, the range was like 30 people deep for the Hawks, given their 2 picks. Now, for me, it would be much shallower. It'd probably be like 15 at the absolute most. But, you know, there's some names. Like, for instance, I like Rasheer Fleming. 13 might be a little bit high for me, the St. Joseph's forward, but I do like him. Not crazy. If they trade down a spot or two or whatever, Liam McNeely of UConn, Jason Richardson of Michigan State. I had them a little bit lower than 13, but like not crazy lower. They're in my top 20. As I said earlier, like, you can also, again, trade down, bring some guys back into play if you do trade down. Like Noah Penda is a guy that I like, French wing, kind of do-it-all role player type. Maxime Reynaud is a big, not a pure center-only player, probably. You got Ben Seraph is a guy I like. Walter Clayton Jr. is popular. I like him too. Danny Wolf is like not my favorite guy, but Danny Wolf at, down the board a little bit is intriguing. The upside is clear. Skill set's intriguing, etc. So one more thing before we get to the kind of wrap up portion of this, especially now they only have one pick. I think the Hawks certainly could look to get back into the second round of this class. They have less of a roster crunch now. They made a 2-for-1 trade today, and they took a pick away. So they went from having a projected, roster that was getting kind of full to having 2 less players, if you kind of factor that in with the pick and the 2-for-1. So they don't have a pick now. It's not that hard to come by, second-round pick. They did it last year with Jurisic to trade it up a little bit. 2 years ago with Mo Gay, they went and got one out of nowhere. It can be done in the 30s or even in the 40s. The price is not that high. So if they have a first-round grade, like they did on Mo Gay, like they did on Jurisic, and that guy's available at 38, it's very logical. That won't be until Thursday. Keep that in mind. But they could definitely go get something done if they wanted to there. The roster crunch is cleared. They do have last year's second-round pick and Jurisic still available on the roster. And as I said on the earlier podcast today, they have a lot of depth pieces they have to add. They currently have 6 guys, maybe 7 if you want to include V. Krejci that you totally trust, but 6 guys for sure. Starting 5 with one of the centers, the other center. Then you have V and Mo Gay. That's your current top 8. And they need to kind of build that out with either with LeVert or other guys or rookies or whatever. They got work to do. But overall, as I sign off here, I'll say this. I really like where the Hawks are going into Wednesday. They have a talented core that I'm high on. They have optionality with their centers now. They have a talented guy in Porzingis. They have depth needs for sure, but it could be a straight-ahead day. If they just draft a player at 13 and do nothing else, I won't be shocked. You shouldn't be either. Generally, the default is it's the most likely scenario to just make your picks because trades are hard sometimes. So if they draft a guy that I mentioned earlier or somebody that I haven't even mentioned, whatever, sure. Plug it in and go. They can also make non-draft trades on Wednesday. You're allowed to do that. It's a very active time in the league. As we've seen the last few days, there's been lots of transactions, including the Hawks trade today. Extra picks could be if they trade back, could be in the mix. Again, I poked fun at it, but honestly saying optionality 10 times on Monday, it's funny, but it's true, and it should be a really fun day. So I love the draft. I'm excited about it. Before I sign off, I want to thank my guests again for coming on the podcast. This is not in any order over the last 2+ months, but Jonathan Wasserman, Ben Pfeiffer, Rafael Barlow, Brian Schroeder, Bryce Hendricks, Will Rucker, Richard Stamen, Leaf Tulane. Also, my Hawks guys that have come on, my Hawks people that cover the Hawks come on, talk about the draft and other things. Andrew Kelly, Tower Jones, Glenn Willis, and Kevin Chenard. More to come. I have asks out there for some episodes in the next couple of weeks as we kind of dissect what happens to the draft, what's looking to happen move forward. There is this kind of interesting zone between the draft and the start of free agency, which is a couple of days later. Trade season kind of ongoing. So we will be here all the way through. I'll have podcasts almost every day, every hour if something happens. But stick with us. I'll be rolling 4 or 5 times a week through the end of Summer League and then still multiple episodes per week after that, even in the dead zone of August and September. So thank you for listening. I'm excited about the draft. Lots to look at on Wednesday. I will be down at the Hawks media event on Wednesday evening, so I'll be hearing from Ansi Saleh. After that, I'll probably share some sound from that or with some thoughts from Ansi after they make the pick on Wednesday. But please subscribe to this show anywhere you find your podcasts, where you're listening right now, plus on YouTube as well. So Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Ratings and reviews appreciated, likes, all that fun stuff. Follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. My non-podcast coverage of the Hawks is mostly at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody. Be careful out there. Unless something crazy happens, this will be the last show until the draft because I do have a day job, so I don't even know if I could record between now and the draft. If something crazy happens, I'll do my best to get you something, whether it be a short or whatever. But in the meantime, stay tuned. I'll have a podcast late Wednesday evening into Thursday. Let's have fun, and we'll see you all next time.